what's the next thing I want to talk about? So make sure you support small businesses. Make sure you tip and all of that. Now, I wanted to talk about someone who I have done work with, and it was my pleasure. So, and I'm very proud of the accomplishments that he has made. And then I'm gonna tell you about my role with this person, okay? And that is none other than who you guys know as Uncle Luke. I call him Mr. Campbell, Mr. Luther Campbell. All right. So this is the last book that he wrote is Luther Campbell, the Book of Luke, My Fight for Truth, Justice, Liberty, and Liberty City. Let me read it again. Luther Campbell, the Book of Luke, My Fight for Truth, Justice, and Liberty City. When this book first came out a few years ago, I jumped on it because I was like, I want to see what writes in the book versus what I know. And I mean, when I tell you I cried reading that book about the things that he has been through in his life, and I'm talking about Luther Campbell. See, there's Uncle Luke, which I'll see on TV and everything, and then there's Luther Campbell, the person that I got to know by working with him. So how I got to work with him was through my friend, Mr. Hank Harper, who was working with him at the time and who brought me on board when he released his first book, which is this book right here. It's called My Life in Freaky Times. Okay. And he also had a CD that came out with this book. And so what happened was I came on as part of the publicity team. Now, when I went back to work at where I work at now, the rumor was that I was one of the dancers. And I was like, where did you get that from? I don't know. People just make up stuff and just run with it. I don't know where they got that from. Maybe because it was Luke. It was Luke. Maybe because, but I was there as part of his publicity team, and I booked all of the radio interviews for this book that he released. This was his first book, I believe, called My Life in Freaky Times. And so what he did was he went on a tour where he would go to the different radio stations. He would have a book signing at the record stores at the time, and the malls and stuff like that. And then later on in the evening, either the radio station or someone else would sponsor a concert where he would be there as Uncle Luke, not Two Live Crew. It's two separate things. All right. So let me tell you about my experience working for this man. First of all, when I when I first went down there, they were calling me the gospel lady, the church lady, because that's how people knew me from doing the Gospel Star Search and doing the South Florida Gospel News newsletter at the time. And the Gospel Star Search, I was known. Plus, I was on the radio on B106.3 with Brother Sanford Ward doing gospel. That's all people knew me as some kind of church lady. So when I accepted the position of helping with the publicity, because that's what I do. I put people on TV, in the newspaper. I get them interviews. And so I was hired because of my experience in doing publicity. So when I first got down there, I was like, first of all, should I take this job? And I said, well, it's paying. I'm going to get my check. And what I was hired by Urban Box Office. Urban Box Office is where my check was coming from. Okay. So I wasn't working for Luther Campbell. I was working with him. That's why I said that. I was working for Urban Box Office, and they were responsible for the marketing of this project, this book. All right. So when I got there, I already had this image in my mind, like a lot of people do. And then people, in the gospel community, oh, how could you go work for him? And God is not pleased and all this other stuff. I said in my mind, well, God has given me the opportunity to earn me a paycheck because you're not giving me nothing. So I went down there. It was me, another gentleman. I'm not gonna call his name. That we all know. We were all friends, and Hank brought us on to go down there and do some work because we were the best at what we do. All right. So first time I went down there, and I was sitting in the office, and I heard somebody say, "Yo." And I was like, well, who is that? Well, first of all, let me back up. Okay, so when we got to the house, I really didn't know what to expect because the only thing I had seen of Mr. Campbell was on a loop. So those what is it? Those freak Nick things and all of that kind of stuff. That's all I knew. Two Live Crew and that whole scenario was all I knew about Luther Campbell. I knew him as Uncle Lou up until the day I started working. I didn't know what to expect. And I was like, Lord, I don't know what I'm gonna see. And we were working from his home. His office was inside his home. Okay. So when I got there, he wasn't downstairs. So we sat and we waited and waited for him to come so that we can be introduced. And then we would learn our role and what he expected of us to do. So I'm walking in the door thinking I'm going to see, women everywhere in bikinis or a beach party or something real crazy going on. Right. So it was not the case at all. It was very professional. We sat there and waited. And then while we were waiting, I heard, yo, yo. That's how he introduced himself to let people know he was up, he was home, and you better respond because if you don't, something might happen to you if he's not aware you are in his home. All right. So we met and then, he introduced himself. He explained his role of, he was trying to do the entertainment division of his company as well as the book. And he was also starting this youth football league that he was talking about. And I had no idea that he was involved in football and coaching and mentoring and helping children and giving back to the community because all the media focused on at the time was this man with this nasty music and him two live crew and all that stuff, but they never focused on him as an entrepreneur, as somebody who supports and give back to the community, as somebody who helps children, et cetera, et cetera. And so the reason that I am bringing this up is because I believe on Tuesday night, A&E featured him on the origins of hip hop and where they really went into his contributions to music, which he has never been recognized for. His sacrifice is why we are able to enjoy the kind of music that we want to enjoy. He ended up going to jail, fighting and battling all the way to the Supreme Court for First Amendment rights. And so he is the one who designed and created the parental warning sticker that you find on material today. He came up with that sticker. He created it. That's his own creation. So on the origins of hip hop, you'll see picture here are those who are featured on A&E. You got Eve, you got Grandmaster Flash, Lil Jon, Fat Joe, Ice T, Busta Rhymes, Ja Rule, and last but not least on the far end is Uncle Luke. All right. So he talks about where he grew up. He talks about his mother and his father, some of his family members giving an interview. So please go to A&E. You can do on demand, or you can go to YouTube. They have the videos on YouTube of that show and some of the past shows. Just look up A&E Origins of Hip Hop. And so, long story short, on working with Mr. Luther Campbell, let's just say it was epic. That was over 10 years ago. We do keep in touch through social media. He's someone that I do love and respect very, very much for his tireless work in the community. And finally, people are recognizing him for that. And for many, many years, he was ignored, first of all, for doing bass music. A lot of people up north didn't like the bass music, they didn't like him. Even when I was booking his interviews, there are some people who told me, I'm talking about program directors at these stations, oh, he will never set foot in my studio. Now you got some of those same stations begging for interviews, begging to come on. And I remember one time we were working in the office, and I think he had AT&T or somebody. We were having issues with the internet. So, of course, I had to always be on the internet trying to email and call these radio stations and plead with them to allow him to come on and talk about his book. It wasn't easy trying to get it done, and then you're crushed for time. Um, and then when you're working for somebody who is purpose driven, like Mr. Campbell, no is not acceptable. Go back, ask again, ask this person, ask that person, get this book, look up all of these things, send emails out, make these phone calls. And I did it. I survived. And when I tell you, I jumped in with both feet, and I was like, I got to figure this out. I can't just depend on other people. I have to do it. He is expecting me to get this done, and guess what? Your girl got it done. Okay. So it was a great experience working hand on with somebody. And when you're working in somebody's home, you have to be trusted, and I proved myself to be trusted. All of his information I've kept confidential to this day. It's nothing wild or crazy or anything like that. But when you're working in someone's home and you're looking at their bills and their social security number is on stuff, their bank account information is on stuff, and you have some people who are mad and they're doing all kinds of things, that information has and will always remain confidential. So I want to thank Mr. Campbell for trusting me with your most confidential information and allowing me to work with you. It was a great experience. And given the opportunity, I probably would do it again because he did some great things. And once I learned more about him on a personal level, especially with the learning about how he got arrested and how they were so nasty to him at some of his shows. I had so much more respect for him as a person. You talk about a man who believes in God, a man who's spiritual, and again helps people and gives back. That's what he does, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you, Mr. Luther Campbell. I will never forget it. I will never ever forget it. As he always says, it was epic. So I'm gonna move on to something else.